In the quiet hush before the gentle rain, Clara, at 12 years old, nestled by the arched window of the old farmhouse on the outskirts of Ouro Preto. For her, silence wasn't an absence, but a dense tapestry of colors and textures that others' words turned into a jarring, almost unbearable noise. A rare synesthesia made every sound vibrate through her body like a shock, and the act of speaking, of externalizing her own voice, had become a torment, an insurmountable barrier that kept her prisoner in her own mind. In the pocket of her calico dress, her fingers traced the cold, perfectly smooth surface of a river stone, her personal amulet, the only object that seemed to understand her need for touch without the invasion of sound. It was there, in that repeated familiar touch, that she found brief refuge, an anchor point amidst the sensory chaos of her daily life. Clara yearned for connection, for a friend who could see beyond her muteness, who could feel the world as she did, or at least accept her way of experiencing it. But fear, planted and watered by resignation to silence, was too high a wall. She distrusted any kindness that seemed forced, any gaze that lingered longer than necessary, interpreting them as pity or, worse, invasive curiosity. This distrust was her greatest internal flaw, the knot that prevented her from reaching out, from trying to grasp the world she saw passing by. A world vibrant with shades and shadows, yet inaccessible to her touch. The farm, with its wild gardens where wildflowers danced in the wind, was her universe, vast and solitary. The smell of wet earth that the breeze carried after the soft afternoon rains was one of the few pure pleasures, an olfactory symphony that didn't hurt. The matriarch of the farm, Donna Elsa, Clara's grandmother, was the guardian of this universe and also her jailer. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, what's your name and what city are you watching this story from? It's great to have you here. Donna Elsa was a woman of few words, with eyes that seemed to see through walls and souls. She moved through the house with silent efficiency, her steps firm on the wooden floor. Her presence was both a comfort and an oppression for Clara. In the name of protection, Elsa kept her granddaughter isolated, arguing that the outside world was too cruel for someone so sensitive. No child from the neighboring village was invited to play. No visits were encouraged. The rare times a neighbor dared to approach, Donna Elsa erected an invisible barrier of formality and distrust, making them retreat. Clara, in turn, observed everything, absorbing every detail, every shadow, every muffled sound that reached her. The girl felt there was something more, a truth hidden beneath the calm routine and vigilant care of her grandmother. Why so much seclusion? Why did the house seem to hold so many secrets in its antique furniture and thick walls? She spent hours sifting through dusty books in the small library, not to read the words, which for her were just dead symbols, but to feel the texture of the pages, the smell of aged paper, and to look for images that could tell stories without sound. One afternoon, while tidying an old dresser in her room, a piece of furniture rarely touched and holding only a few faded linens, Clara's fingers brushed against something hard and smooth, hidden deep inside a drawer. It was a small object, almost swallowed by the soft, forgotten fabric. Curious, she pulled out what seemed to be a piece of wood. In the palm of her hand rested a small wooden bird, dark and heavy, with its wings folded as if in eternal rest. It wasn't one of her toys, nor did it resemble any decorative object on the farm. The wood, dark and polished by time, had a subtle sheen. Clara felt a strange connection to that bird. It was silent, like her. On the belly of the small sculpture, almost imperceptible in the dark wood, there was a tiny engraving. With wide eyes, Clara tried to decipher the letters, but the dim light of the room and the wear of time made the task impossible. Who could have left that bird there? And more importantly, why? That simple object, forgotten at the bottom of a drawer, seemed to whisper a story from a time Clara didn't know, a time Donna Elsa never mentioned. It was a clue, a small crack in the wall of silence her grandmother had built around her. What else was hidden? It was a clue, a small crack in the wall of silence her grandmother had built around her. What else was hidden? Clara squeezed the wooden bird against her palm, feeling the texture of the old wood, polished by time. That small object was an enigma, a silent invitation to uncover something Donna Elsa would never allow. She knew her grandmother disliked questions or objects out of place. Anything that disturbed the established order on the farm, was viewed with suspicion, almost as a personal affront. Therefore, the bird had to be a secret, guarded with the same care Clara guarded her own thoughts. The next morning, Clara's curiosity burned brighter than the sun streaming through the window. She waited for the moment Donna Elsa was busy in the kitchen, preparing lunch, the scent of spices filling the house. With the wooden bird hidden under her shirt, Clara went to the small library. There were no books about carved birds, nor stories of families who lived there before them. The library was a labyrinth of dense volumes, which for Clara were just blocks of paper with meaningless marks. But she sought something different, an image, a map, anything that could give form to her sensations. She took an old magnifying glass that sat on the solid wooden desk, forgotten there for years, and brought it to her room. With the sunlight hitting the small sculpture directly, Clara brought the lens closer. The letters, previously just indecipherable scratches, began to take shape. It was a name or part of a name. LM, and then a number. 1938. Clara's hands trembled. Who was LM? And what did that year mean? The bird wasn't just a forgotten toy. It was a piece of a past, a loose thread in the silent tapestry of her life. This discovery, however small, opened a crack in her wall of distrust. Clara had always felt that others' kindness was a trap, but the wooden bird, that piece of history, asked for nothing in return. It merely existed, a silent testament to something that needed to be revealed. But how to follow the clue without Donna Elsa noticing? Her grandmother had eyes in every corner of the farm, and a silence that seemed to hear even Clara's most secret thoughts. Have you ever felt this urgency to unravel a mystery that belonged to you, but seemed forbidden? Tell us in the comments, what was the first small clue that made you want to go deeper? And use the hashtag #SilentBird so we can find your story. Days passed, and the farm routine seemed even heavier for Clara. Every step Donna Elsa took, every glance her grandmother cast her way, was a reminder of the wall that separated them. Clara began to observe her grandmother more closely, looking for any sign, any gesture that might indicate a crack in her impassive facade. She noticed that every night before going to bed, Donna Elsa sat in an old armchair in the living room, always with a small, dark wooden chest beside her. Her grandmother spent long minutes rummaging through something inside that chest, something she never showed anyone. That chest became the new focus of Clara's curiosity. What did Donna Elsa guard with such care and secrecy? Could the chest have some connection to the wooden bird, to the name LM, and to the year 1938? Clara knew that invading her grandmother's privacy was a huge risk. Donna Elsa's fury, though silent, was palpable and frightening. But the thirst for answers, for unraveling the puzzle that was her own life, was even greater. One afternoon, while Donna Elsa was in the vegetable garden, Clara saw her opportunity. The chest was there, in the armchair as always. Clara's heart pounded, an erratic rhythm that resonated throughout her body. With the lightest step she could manage, she approached. The chest was not locked. As she opened the lid, a smell of old paper and lavender filled her nostrils. Inside, there was a tangle of fine fabrics, faded lace, and at the bottom something stiffer. Carefully, Clara removed the fabrics, and her fingers touched a piece of paper. It was an old photograph, yellowed by time. The image showed a young man and woman smiling. The woman had Donna Elsa's same piercing eyes, but with a sparkle of happiness Clara had never seen in her grandmother. And the man, with a gentle gaze and a smile that seemed to fill the photo, held a small wooden bird in his hand, the same bird Clara had in her room. On the back of the photo, in elegant handwriting, was written, "To my Lucia with eternal love, Manuel, 1938, Lucia, LM." Could that woman, Lucia, be Clara's mother, and Manuel, her father? The photograph was not just an image, it was a revelation. It was proof that Clara's story was much bigger and much sadder than she had ever imagined. The photograph was not just an image, it was a revelation. It was proof that Clara's story was much bigger and much sadder than she had ever imagined. Clara's heart beat like a drum in her ribcage, and her hands trembled as she carefully folded the photo, as if it were fragile paper that could crumble at the slightest touch. Quickly, She placed the image back in the bottom of the chest under the fabrics and lace and closed the lid. The smell of lavender and secrets seemed to intensify in the air. She knew she had to act fast before Donna Elsa returned from the vegetable garden. With the wooden bird well hidden and the image of the photograph etched in her mind, Clara returned to her room. The world, previously just a jumble of sensations, began to gain sharper but also more painful contours. Her grandmother, previously just the silent guardian, now revealed herself as a guardian of hidden truths, a sentinel of a past Clara could barely imagine. Why had Donna Elsa hidden all this? Why had she never spoken of Lucia and Manuel, the smiling young people in the photo? Clara's distrust, previously a shield against others' pity, now turned inward, questioning every affectionate gesture from her grandmother, every vigilant gaze. That night, dinner was a torment. Every movement of Donna Elsa, every clinking utensil on the dishware resonated in Clara like a muffled scream. The girl observed her grandmother with a new lens, seeking in the wrinkles of her face and in the heavy silence a clue, a sign of pain or regret. Did Donna Elsa feel the same weight of that secret Clara now carried? Was the isolation imposed on her granddaughter a way to protect herself, to keep the past buried? The following days were a silent game of hide and seek. Clara, her mind buzzing, began to search the farm with more attentive eyes. She knew Donna Elsa held other secrets, and that truth, like weeds, always found a way to grow, even under the heaviest stones. The small library, once just a refuge of smells and textures, became a field of investigation. Clara didn't read the words, but looked for dates, for scribbles, for anything that could connect Lucia and Manuel to that farmhouse. She felt that her own voice, so long imprisoned, would only be freed when the truth came to light. On one of the highest shelves, behind a series of old and dusty accounting books, Clara found an envelope. It was a simple envelope, unstamped, yellowed, and with worn edges. Inside, there was no letter, but a newspaper clipping. The news, already faded, spoke of a family dispute in a neighboring town many years ago. The title, in bold letters, mentioned the silver inheritance. The article was short, but Clara managed to decipher some keywords, associating them with the year 1938, the same year engraved on the wooden bird and in the photograph. The text spoke of two siblings who, amidst a family tragedy, had fallen out over land and possessions, leaving an elderly father on the verge of death in total abandonment. "Let him die alone," a phrase attributed to one of the siblings, was quoted in the article. The name Manuel Silva appeared in a smaller paragraph as one of the heirs who had mysteriously disappeared after the fight, before the situation was resolved. Mysteriously disappeared. Clara's mouth went dry. Could that Manuel be the same man from the photograph, her father, and the siblings? Would they be the uncles she never knew? The story seemed to fit together in terrifying pieces. That newspaper clipping, a fragile and almost forgotten piece of paper, was more than a clue. It was a hole in the wall Donna Elsa had built. It revealed not only the existence of a larger family, but also the shadow of a tragedy, of a dishonor that perhaps justified Clara's isolation. Social pressure, others' judgment, the shame of a name tainted by greed and abandonment, all of this could have led Donna Elsa to hide her granddaughter from the world. Clara felt the weight of the inheritance she carried, not of land or possessions, but of silences and secrets. With each discovery, the emotional cost increased. She was not just a mute girl, she was the echo of an untold story, living proof of a past someone tried to erase. The wooden bird, the photograph, the newspaper clipping. Each of them was a fragment of astonishment, an invitation to delve even deeper into the darkness of truth, not knowing what awaited her at the bottom. The house, once her refuge, now seemed an even larger prison, full of echoes of voices she couldn't hear but could feel. Donna Elsa's presence, once comforting, was now one of constant vigilance, a silent reminder that every step Clara took towards the truth was a step towards the unknown, and perhaps even greater solitude. What else was so painful that it needed to be guarded with such rigor? The house, once her refuge, now seemed an even larger prison, full of echoes of voices she couldn't hear but could feel. Donna Elsa's presence, once comforting, was now one of constant vigilance, a silent reminder that every step Clara took towards the truth was a step towards the unknown and perhaps even greater solitude. What else was so painful that it needed to be guarded with such rigor? Clara felt the weight of each discovered secret: the wooden bird, the photograph, the newspaper clipping. Each was a fragment, a promise of a larger story that stubbornly remained hidden. She spent sleepless nights, the sensations of the external world amplified in her mind, transforming the farm's silence into a chorus of unanswered questions. Why did Donna Elsa keep her so isolated? Was it merely family shame, or was there something more her grandmother feared? The girl decided she needed more than clues. She needed confirmation, a link that would tie all the loose ends. She began to observe Donna Elsa with even greater intensity. She noticed that her grandmother, despite her rigidity, at times seemed lost in thought, with a distant, almost melancholic gaze, while watering the plants in the garden or stirring the pot on the wood stove. These were the moments when Clara felt a pang of pity for her grandmother, a woman who also seemed a prisoner of her own silence. On one of these mornings of observation, Clara saw Donna Elsa sitting on the porch, holding a small, faded lace handkerchief. Her grandmother clutched it to her chest, her eyes watering but without shedding a single tear. It was a restrained, silent cry, echoing Clara's own muteness. When her grandmother stood up to go to the garden, the handkerchief slipped from her lap and fell between the armchair cushions. Clara waited. With her heart pounding, the girl approached the armchair. She picked up the handkerchief. It was made of fine fabric with delicate embroidery of the initials L.S. Lucia Silva, her mother's name. The handkerchief still held the soft scent of lavender, the same smell that came from Donna Elsa's chest. But what else did that handkerchief reveal? Carefully unfolding it, Clara felt a thicker fold. There was a tiny piece of paper, almost invisible, sewn into the hem. With trembling fingers, Clara unstitched the seam. Inside was a note, written in hurried, almost illegible handwriting, but which she recognized as the same as the annotation on the back of the photograph. "Elsa, forgive me. I can't anymore. Take care of her. L." The message was short, sharp, a dagger in Clara's chest. I can't anymore. What couldn't Lucia do anymore? Those words resonated in the girl's mind, painting an even darker picture. The feeling that a piece was missing intensified. It wasn't just the story of inheritance and family dishonor. There was something more, something personal and desperate in those few words. Her grandmother wasn't just hiding shame, she was hiding an even greater pain, a tragedy that involved Clara's own mother. The misdirection, the idea that the isolation was merely because of the family quarrel, began to crumble. Clara felt a lump in her throat, an uncontrollable urge to scream, to make her voice heard, so that someone could explain what that note meant. But the scream remained trapped, as always, in her throat. She clutched the handkerchief and the note in her hands, feeling the texture of the fabric and the roughness of the paper, as if she could extract from them the truth that refused to be spoken. That note was proof that Lucia hadn't just disappeared, she had left, leaving Clara and Donna Elsa behind. But why? What led her to such a drastic decision? Lucia's absence, once a void, now transformed into a burning question, an open wound that Clara needed to heal with the truth. The farm, with its wild gardens and its silence, now seemed a stage for a drama far more complex than the girl could have imagined. Could her grandmother, with her silence and protection, merely be trying to erase the memory of a mother who had abandoned her daughter? Or was there an even deeper secret, a truth that not even Donna Elsa could bear? Clara felt she was approaching an abyss, and that the truth, when it finally came to light, would forever change her life, for better or for worse. What else did the walls of that old house guard? That note, sewn into her mother's handkerchief, was a silent cry that Clara could finally hear. Lucia's pain, the feeling of not being able to anymore, echoed in the girl's soul. She pressed the handkerchief and the note against her chest, feeling the weight of the unspoken words. When Donna Elsa returned from the garden, the sun was already setting, painting the sky in orange hues. Clara sat in the armchair on the porch, the lace handkerchief still in her hands. Her grandmother sensed something different in the air, a tension that was not just her granddaughter's usual silence. Elsa's eyes, always so firm, darted away for an instant, as if they had seen a ghost. She noticed the handkerchief, recognized the embroidered LSU, and an almost imperceptible tremor ran through her body. Donna Elsa didn't ask. She simply sat in her rocking chair, her gaze fixed on the horizon, as if trying to contain a sea of memories threatening to overflow. The silence of that night was different, a silence charged with unspoken accusations, with questions that needed no voice to be understood. The next day, the farm woke under a thin mist, the kind that seems to suspend time. Clara was in the kitchen helping Donna Elsa prepare coffee when the sound of a car approaching on the dirt road leading to the house broke the morning's stillness. It was an unusual sound. Cars rarely came to the farm. Donna Elsa stopped, the wooden spoon suspended in the air. A wrinkle of worry creased her forehead. Clara felt a shiver. Who could it be? Her grandmother walked to the porch and Clara followed, curiosity mixed with an old fear. A black car, gleaming and out of place in the country dust, stopped in front of the gate. From inside, a well-dressed man emerged in a dark suit with a leather briefcase in his hands. His hair was grey and neatly combed, and his thin-rimmed glasses gave him an air of seriousness. He looked like a character out of an old movie, completely out of sync with the farm's simplicity. He introduced himself as Dr. Almeida, a notary from a neighboring town's district, and asked to speak with Donna Elsa about a family matter. His eyes lingered on Clara, with a kindness that was not pity, but recognition. Donna Elsa invited him in, her voice huskier than usual. The silence in the room was heavy. The smell of coffee mingled with the lavender scent still lingering in the air. Dr. Almeida opened his briefcase and took out a large yellowed envelope with a wax seal that seemed untouched. "Donna Elsa," he began, his voice calm and formal, "I am responsible for fulfilling the last wishes of your father, Mr. Afonso Silva." This letter, written by him, was to be delivered to his daughter Lucia, or in her absence, to his granddaughter, Clara. The name Afonso Silva, Lucia's grandfather, Clara's great-grandfather, Manuel's father, the man from the Silva inheritance, the one the siblings wanted to let die alone. Clara's head spun, everything connected at once. Dr. Almeida then began to read the letter. Afonso Silva's words, written in a firm hand, filled the room, bringing to light a story that seemed to have been buried under years of silence and shame. The letter narrated Afonso's deep disappointment with his older children, who, driven by greed, had tried to appropriate his assets while he was still alive. "They laughed and told me to let me die alone," the letter said, the words echoing the newspaper headline Clara had found. But Afonso had a plan. He had secretly transferred much of his fortune to accounts and properties in the name of Manuel, his youngest son, the only one who had shown loyalty and love. Manuel, Clara's father, had not disappeared out of cowardice or abandonment. He had been forced to hide, to distance himself, to protect the family's assets and, most importantly, to protect Lucia and the daughter he knew was coming. The letter continued, revealing that Manuel, before his own premature and mysterious death, an accident the letter insinuated was not so accidental, but rather a trap set by his siblings, had left clear instructions. He wanted the entire inheritance to go to Lucia, and subsequently, to Clara. The farm where they lived, in fact, was part of this inheritance, as was a large estate in a distant small town, where Manuel had secretly prospered, becoming indeed one of the richest men in the region, far from the greedy eyes of his siblings. Donna Elsa listened with wide eyes, silent tears streaming down her time-worn face. The repressed crying of years finally broke free. The truth was a shock, an earthquake that shook the foundations of her life. Clara's isolation, the excessive protection, all had a new meaning. Elsa was not just hiding Lucia's shame, she was protecting her granddaughter from a dangerous family, from a gigantic inheritance that could cost Clara's life, just as it had cost Manuel's. Lucia's note, "I can't anymore," now made terrible sense. Lucia did not abandon Clara. She tried to protect herself from a threat that Afonso Silva's letter revealed to be real and deadly. She sacrificed herself so Clara could live. Clara, unable to understand all the words, felt the force of the revelation. The tension in the air, her grandmother's crying, the gravity of the notary's voice. It was all a symphony of unveiled truths. She looked at her grandmother, And for the first time she saw not pity or control, but desperate love and deep pain. That old house, once a prison of silence and secrets, now transformed into a sanctuary of memories and a fortress of protection. The wooden bird, the photograph, the newspaper clipping, and Lucia's note, all the fragments came together in a complete picture, revealing a story of love, betrayal, and unimaginable fortune. Clara's world would never be the same. If this story of secrets and sacrifices touches something you felt, this search for a truth that frees, subscribe now and comment here what you would do if you discovered a story like this in your family. Your support, your like, makes more stories like Clara's reach those who need to hear them. Donna Elsa's weeping was the outpouring of years of loneliness and fear, a liberation. Clara, not understanding the words, felt the change in the air. The notary's voice, her grandmother's tears, the gravity of the revelations, everything clicked into place. The wooden bird, the photograph, the newspaper clipping, and Lucia's note. Each item now had its place, its voice in the symphony of deceptions and sacrifices. The truth finally ran free. Dr. Almeida explained the legal steps to formalize the inheritance and protect Clara and Donna Elsa. The law at last would restore justice, and the girl's future gained contours of hope. With the truth exposed, Manuel's greedy siblings, now unmasked by the irrefutable evidence of Afonso Silva's letter and the investigation Dr. Almeida promptly initiated, saw their plans crumble. Justice, slow but relentless, would act. They would not only lose any right to the inheritance, but would also face legal consequences for their actions, including suspicion about Manuel's accident. The wealth they coveted would become the very cause of their ruin, a cruel irony for those who mocked their father's death. Clara, without understanding the legal details, grasped the change. The air felt lighter. The farm, which once seemed a place of obscure secrets, now transformed into a safe haven. The home her father had planned for her, protected by a grandmother who loved her more than life itself. Donna Elsa, free from the burden of so many years of silence and fear, began to heal. Her tears, once contained, now flowed in a river of relief and remorse, a river that washed away the pain of Lucia and Manuel. She told Clara, with gestures and glances, the story of her mother, Lucia's courage, Manuel's sacrifice. And Clara, for the first time, did not feel the weight of incomprehension. She heard the story in colors, in sensations, in every tight embrace from her grandmother. The wooden bird, the photograph, the newspaper clipping, and Lucia's note. Each was a piece of this tapestry of love and sacrifice, now finally complete. The river stone in her pocket, once a refuge for silence, was now a reminder of the power of truth. And so Clara not only inherited a fortune, but also a new perspective. Her muteness did not disappear, but the island of sensations she lived on was no longer solitary. She learned that not all silence is a prison, and that truth, once revealed, can echo louder than any words. She found her voice not in speech, but in understanding, in the deep connection with her grandmother, and in the certainty that she was loved. The distrust that haunted her gave way to confidence, a new foundation upon which to build her relationships. She was no longer alone. The farm, with its wild gardens and the smell of wet earth, continued to be her universe. But now it was a universe of possibilities, of love and justice. In the end, Clara's story reminds us that truth, however hidden, always finds a way. It shows us that love, true love, the kind that sacrifices and protects, is the greatest treasure we can inherit, and that silence at times holds secrets that, once revealed, can set us free. If this story made sense to you, if it touched your heart and made you reflect on family ties and the power of truth, subscribe now to the channel. Leave your comment using the hashtag #LetHimDie and your like. Tell us where you are watching from so I can recognize you in the next chapters. Thank you for staying until the end and supporting our channel.